Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Wrestling with the Apester. I am the Apester himself, of course, and today we're going to be talking about the final part of the Brothers of Destruction saga series that I have going on here. It's the final part. This is the last episode before I upload a SummerSlam review. SummerSlam is tonight. Today, of course, is August 5th, 2023. It is a Saturday. I sit in the comfort of my girlfriend's car once again, as always, here in different places. I'm never home anymore, man. I'm always recording in different places. So, before I get into the Paul Bearer documentary, or podcast, I should say that I'm looking for a new apartment. Right now, I'm waiting to get approved on an apartment. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. The bedrooms are a little bigger. So that'll be cool, and my girlfriend's also moving in with me, officially moving in with me, so that's going to be pretty nice. Rent's pretty high up there. I'm not going to reveal that, but it's pretty high up there. But it's nothing that we can't do. It's not impossible. I'll be paying most of it, of course, but you know, she'll be able to. We can do it. I think she'll be able to give me enough, you know, where we'll be able to afford it, you know. So. Obviously, I can't do it without her help, and I appreciate her for everything she does for me, and I'm sure she appreciates me as well. And but yeah, how awesome would it be if Monday I get the news that I got the apartment? Because Monday, me and her are 7 months in the relationship, so that's pretty cool. I've never found anybody so genuine, so loyal like she is, you know. And her name is a mystery, by the way, because I will not reveal that. So. Anyway, today's episode, of course, we'll be talking about Paul Bearer, his career, his life, stuff like that. I mean, it probably won't be that long as the Undertaker episode, so I really hope you enjoy this series. I figured I'd save Paul Bearer for last because, I don't know, I feel like the Brothers of Destruction would not have been the Brothers of Destruction without Paul Bearer. The story wouldn't have made sense without Paul Bearer, because he's the father of the two in story. I'm glad to see I got quite a couple views on the Undertaker episode, so that's really cool as well. But it's really, I really appreciate you guys listening on. Thank you. I really do. Thank you so much. I know I did delete the episode and re-uploaded it because there were a lot of things I ended up forgetting, like some matches of Undertakers that I forgot to mention and stuff like that. And I do apologize for just, I kept adding a little segments, is what they call it, on the Spotify podcasting app. They call it segments. And you get to add segments to each, to the episode or whatever. Even like right now, if I wanted to, I can go in and add a segment to the episode. But just to be on the safe side, I decided to delete the episode and then re-upload it again. But yeah, I other than that, this should be a pretty cool episode, I hope. We're going to be talking about Paul Bearer here, and I can't wait for SummerSlam tonight. I'm going to get this podcast up, hopefully before then, before SummerSlam starts. I think the kickoff starts at 6, and then the show itself starts at 7. We have quite a few matches we're going to be talking about, of course, on the review show. Now, guys, I do not know when I'm going to get the SummerSlam review up, because probably Monday. Only because of the fact that I'm actually going to a party on tomorrow, which is Sunday, which will be the next day after SummerSlam. And I'll be there a couple hours, so I'm probably not going to have time to upload a review on SummerSlam. I'm also I do want to start packing up. If I do get this apartment, at least I'll have a head start. But I am trying to leave, one way or another, I am trying to leave that apartment complex that I'm in now for another place. Because they're going to be giving everybody eviction notices for renovations. That's at least what one of my tenants upstairs, or one of the tenants rather, upstairs told me. So I'd rather be prepared. I'd rather not have an eviction under my name. I'd rather just leave before I get the eviction itself. So, but like I said, we did find a better opportunity. It's bigger, comes with air conditioning, everything except electric. So it's really cool. Again, not going to reveal how much the rent is, just for privacy reasons. So, yeah. But anyway, let's get straight onto this podcast here. So, where do we begin here, Paul Bear? I guess we can begin with his early life always. Why do I always question when to begin? We should always begin with his early life. I can tell you in my own words for a fact that he used to work in a funeral home, for real. This is for real. He used to work in a funeral home. So that's why the story with Undertaker and Kane, you know, being a Paul Bear and literally being named Paul Bear was just phenomenal. It was perfect. Honestly, it really was. It just fit in like a puzzle. So his real name, again, I'm reading this through Wikipedia, just reading through things that I may or may not know about Paul Bear. I'm sure there will be things here that I don't know. Obviously, his real name is William Moody, middle name Alvin. So William Alvin Moody, I didn't know that. His middle name. American professional wrestling manager, and licensed funeral director. See, told you he worked at a funeral home. He's best known for working with WWF, obviously, with Undertaker and Kane, and obviously I'll be discussing that for sure. I don't know much about his early life. The only thing I know about his early life is that he used to work in a funeral home. And he did wrestle a couple matches. I'm sure I'll maybe get into those. I think he's wrestled maybe like a handful of matches. But he's basically just a manager to all of us. He was an amazing manager, one of the greatest to ever do it as a manager. And he was born April 10th, 1954 in Mobile, Alabama. And he died, I'm assuming, at home, March 5th, 2013 in Mobile, Alabama. As it says right here, I did say Mobile, Alabama. That's when he was born, where he was born and where he died. So I assumed he probably died in his home. The last appearance Paul Bear made on TV, very ironically, Kane had him in a wheelchair, and he basically pushed him into a freezer, and he slowly faded into the freezer, and that was the last time we saw Paul Bear on live television. He was also brought back, in a way, for the CM Punk Undertaker feud, and I'll be discussing that, as well as Undertaker's retirement. They used like a hologram of him, of Paul Bear, and they did the "oh yeah" thing, and so that was pretty cool as well. He also got inducted into the Hall of Fame the next year, I believe it was, or 2013. I believe it was 2013, actually. But it might have been, I'm pretty sure it was 2014. And it was the same year the streak, of course, broke. It was 2013, because 2014 is when the streak broke. 2013 is when he faced CM Punk, and that's when Paul Bear had died. It was around that time. So yeah, it was 2013 that Paul Bear did pass away. Maybe even 2012, but we'll get into that in just a minute anyway. So, he had a heart attack, of course. Passed away from a heart attack. He also had a talk show. Not many people know this, but in the early stages of Undertaker's career, I'd say like in definitely the early 90s, like 91, 92 even, Paul Bear had a talk show called The Funeral Parlor, and he would basically invite guests over. Undertaker was on it a couple times, but obviously it was mostly Paul Bear. Paul Bear would come out and have that high screech, creepy voice, and he'd be like, "Welcome to my funeral parlor." I mean, obviously he does a better voice than I do. And, you know, a lot of great guests have been on that show. More famously, Ultimate Warrior, Jake the Snake Roberts, Hulk Hogan, and many others have been on that talk show. Basically, there was a casket involved, and there was green smoke and stuff, and that's when you know it's a really old school, because Undertaker had the green smoke back then. That's how you know it's really old. So he was married from 1978 until he died. I'm sorry. So he had a spouse, Diana McDowell, who was born in 1978 and died in 2009, if I am not mistaken. Or they got married in 1978. They had 2 children. I didn't know that. There was some wrestling names he had here. Believe it or not, I didn't know some of these. I do know the last 3, though. But the names are The Masked Emballer, Mr. X, Dr. Rigor Mortis, and these last 3 I know for a fact. I know these names. Percival Pringle III. Actually, no, not Percival Pringle III. Percy Pringle III. That's one I know. And then Paul Bear, obviously, everybody knows him. He was 5'10", not that tall, not a giant, you know. He retired in 2012. Again, Kane put him inside of a freezer, and never again did we see Paul Bear on TV. He was also in the service as well from 1972 to 1976. I'll get into that in just a minute. He was a sergeant, rank sergeant. He was in the Air Force. He also got an Air Force Good Conduct Medal. So that's pretty cool. So let's get into his early stages here of his life here. Moody was born in Mobile, Alabama, April 10th, 1954, as I just stated, and attended San Antonio College for the University of South Alabama. And now we get into his professional wrestling career and his early career between 1974 and 1990. So I'm guessing this is early 1990, and then that's when we talk about Undertaker. Oh, yeah, right here. See, 1990 to 2002. So Moody entered professional wrestling in his teenage years as a photographer. So obviously taking pictures, I'm sure, of like ringside of matches, stuff like that. I did not know that. So he left high school and basically got involved in the United States Air Force. He served 4 years on duty during his time, and he often wrestled independent promotions during off-duty hours. 1979, Moody began managing as Percy Pringle III in Southeastern Independent Promotions a few years earlier. In June of 1994, he wrestled as Mr. X. So, like I said, not many people know he had a wrestling career, but obviously a lot of people know him as a manager, Paul Bear. And there is a picture here as well with his time in the U.S. Air Force in the 70s. He had been previous Percy Pringles in wrestling, who were not in wrestling who were not William Moody. That didn't make any sense. He was given his wrestling name by Booker Frankie Kane. No clue who that guy is, but immediately after his first son's birth, he cut back his involvement in the wrestling business in order to obtain a degree in mortuary science and earn certification as an embalmer and mortician. And that ties into, of course, under him and managing the Undertaker and how it was so perfect for him. Like, it was a perfect role for him. It was just it's like Paul Bear had said in an interview one time. He said it was just a perfect fit. It fit so perfectly. And Paul Bear was a very calm person when he spoke in these interviews, by the way. I don't know. He just seemed so laid back, so calm. That's really cool. In 1984, he resumed full-time involvement in the wrestling business using his Pringle character in Championship Wrestling from Florida and World Class Championship Wrestling, so that's WCCW, in Texas. During his time, he was WCCW's answer to Bobby Heenan by doing Heenan-like promos, even looking like Heenan as well as the blonde hair and attire. So that's pretty cool. He served as a manager for numerous wrestlers. Obviously, a lot of people know he managed The Undertaker, so I'm not even going to mention that one. But he also managed Rick Rude and Stunning Steve Austin in their early careers, I should say. As Percy Pringle, he was also associated with careers of Lex Luger, Eric Embry, and The Ultimate Warrior. And this takes us, of course, to WWE. He debuted December 20... hang on. So, Paul Bear debuted in 1991. I'm not sure which date exactly, but it should say it right here. February... Yeah. So, February of 1991... Brother Love, who was the current manager of Undertaker at the time, he also debuted with Undertaker as his manager at the time. He had Brother Love had this talk show. He basically, not a talk show, but more of like a I don't know, I forget the name of it. But he had this like little the Love Factory or something like that. I don't remember what it is. It doesn't say it here, but basically, he said that Undertaker needed a better person to guide him through his career. And he basically said, what better person than Paul Bear? Paul Bear obviously introduced himself, so he came out as Brother Bear, and then Brother Love was like, "What's your first name?" Paul Bear, of course, says Paul, and yeah, Paul Bear debuted in February of 1991 as Undertaker's manager, and the rest was history. The Undertaker delegated Bear to take on the role of Undertaker's manager, complementing the Undertaker's dead man gimmick. Bear took on a spooky, ghastly character. Bear hosted his own WWF talk show segment entitled The Funeral Parlor, which I've already mentioned, so I'm not going to go in depth with it as I already did. He had guests on there like Ultimate Warrior and Jake the Snake Roberts. Hulk Hogan was on there at one point as well, so those are the more infamous people that I know that have been on that talk show. Again, he had like the coffin at the time, the wooden coffin there, and the flower, like I forget what they call the wreath that they had. Sorry, I'm blocking the thing. Anyway, the funeral parlor. Let me repeat that in case you guys didn't hear. I had my finger over the speaker. So basically, it had like a wooden coffin with like a wreath on it, and it had green smoke, and Undertaker's theme was quietly playing in the background, and Paul Bear was doing his voice. And not all the time Undertaker would show up on this talk show, because this was basically just a Paul Bear show. It did not last that long. I'm not sure when the last episode was. I'm sure it'll come up here. But yeah, he had that awesome talk. I thought it was an awesome talk show, honestly. It was so cool to see that green smoke and the coffin and everything. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, by the way, with Ultimate Warrior being part of it, the talk show, in my opinion, the Ultimate Warrior segment was the more notable one for me, because he was locked in a coffin by The Undertaker. And this is that same segment where they tried getting Ultimate Warrior out of the coffin, and they couldn't. They struggled to get him out, and they finally, eventually, there was like 10 minutes later, they got him out, and he was knocked out inside the coffin. You can see that he was trying to claw out his way out of the coffin as well. Just give me 1 second. I'm closing the window here. There we go. Sorry about that. Anyway, I was just closing the window there. So, don't have the AC on right now. I don't want to waste our gas for it. But anyway. Obviously, Paul Bear had his own catchphrase. He had the, "Oh, yes." I'm sure everybody has their own imitation of it. So, very, very known for that catchphrase. He also came out with an urn. Before I talk about the urn, I'm going to talk about his appearance. So basically, he had black hair. He had these black makeup patches, kind of, sort of, under his eyes. His skin was very, very pale. Very pale. Almost like Brother Love, in his face being very red. Except Paul Bear's face was very, very white. Very, very white, very, very pale. I don't know what that was. Jesus, pardon me for that. He also had a black suit on with a red tie. But more infamously, he used to come out with that urn. And basically, the urn, it was something that, like, he didn't have it in his debut. It was just an idea that they had, that Paul Bear had, that Paul Bear felt like he was missing something. Like, he wanted to come out to the ring with something in his hand. Like, he needed to carry something. And he thought, what better object to carry than the urn? And the urn was usually an urn is used for like ashes, for like if someone gets cremated, they put their ashes in there. But in this case, the urn had magical powers. So basically, whenever the urn was opened, Undertaker would basically be summoned. Undertaker would, like, his powers would be summoned, and he would summon, he would just show up, one day, like, "Hey, don't make me open up the urn and get the Undertaker out here." "Oh, no, don't do it." Okay, he opens the urn. Next thing you know, Undertaker comes out and destroys the hell out of whoever he's facing. So the urn, like I said, was just something that Paul Bear thought like he needed to have. He needed to have something in his hand when he was walking out to the ring. And it was the greatest thing that I think I had ever seen, ever. It was just so perfect. I love The Undertaker. I love Paul Bear. I love Kane. I love this whole story, this whole saga of the Brothers of Destruction. And Paul Bear was a huge part of it, and we will talk about that in just a moment. So basically, Paul Bear came back as a heel. Let me open the window again. I'm sorry. I don't even know why I closed it. I don't want people to hear me speaking on my own, but that's okay. Whatever. I'm just dying in here, so let me just keep the window open. Not a good idea having the thing closed. Actually, you know what? I will I will open up the sunroof as well, because I'm letting the air in. See what I'm saying? This car has a sunroof. This is a bougie car. Let me tell you something. Anyway, back to Paul Bear. So Paul Bear took on a spooky, ghastly character. He hosted his own talk show, which I've already talked about. The Ultimate Warrior being locked in the casket, I already talked about as well. In late 1991, Undertaker won his first WWF championship, and of course, that was Paul Bear was by his side. He defeated Hulk Hogan. This was at Survivor Series of 91. So this was pretty much exactly a year after he debuted, in a way. So, he would lose the title. Undertaker would lose the title back to Hogan 6 days later. Basically, in 1992, Undertaker and Paul Bear turned face when Undertaker stopped Jake the Snake Roberts from hitting Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth with a chair backstage. Undertaker and Roberts had a match at WrestleMania 8, which saw Undertaker win, and obviously Undertaker had a streak at the time, but it was never acknowledged. And I did mention this in the Undertaker documentary, and also briefly, I believe I mentioned this in the Kane one. I might have. So now we get into 1996 to 1998, where Undertaker, where Paul Bear managed Mankind and managed Kane. So, like I said, this documentary shouldn't be that long. This podcast, I shouldn't say documentary. I keep saying documentary. Podcast, excuse me. This podcast shouldn't be that long because there's not really much to cover in his career, to be honest, because he basically just came out as a manager. He never won like a championship or anything like that, but he was part of a lot of different segments as well, so we will be talking about that. But first, managing Mankind and Kane, 1996, 1998. So basically, before I read this, in my own words, I'm going to describe it best as I can. So basically, Paul Bear betrayed Undertaker to side with Mankind. And as far as the managing Kane is concerned, basically, it was his debut. Kane's debut. He came out as Kane, and I'll be discussing that, of course, in a little bit. So basically, screw it. I'll just tell you now. Paul Bear came out one night on Raw and basically told the story of Kane and The Undertaker and how they were brothers and all that, and that he was coming. And then weeks later, of course, at the In Your House Bad Blood pay-per-view, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels had a match. First ever Hell in a Cell match, I should say. Out comes Paul Bear with Kane in the middle of the match. He stares. Kane rips the door off the hinges. He stares down the Undertaker, chokeslams him, tombstone, the whole 9 yards. He walks away. Shawn Michaels gets the win in the match, thanks to Kane and Paul Bear. So let me just get into managing Mankind. Eventually, Bear turned heel again by betraying his longtime protege at SummerSlam of 1996 to align himself with Undertaker's arch enemy, Mankind and Goldust. I didn't know he managed Goldust. That's kind of funny. I know he managed Mankind. So basically, this was a Buried Alive match that they had. And basically, the goal of this match was to grab the urn that Paul Bear was holding in his hand. Paul Bear was in the ring. He was holding the urn. And this was a boiler room brawl. Undertaker and Mankind started inside the boiler room. They were fighting until they got backstage, the backstage area. Eventually, they made it to the live audience, into the arena. And eventually, Undertaker got on one knee. He put up his two hands, signaling the end that we thought Paul Bear was going to give him the urn. However, Paul Bear hits him in the head with the urn and turns on the Undertaker by doing so. And he aligns himself with Mankind. Mankind grabs the urn. Mankind wins the match. and they walk away. Some druids come out, I believe, in this match and grab Undertaker's corpse, and they take it away, and that was the end of the match. I believe that was the main event of SummerSlam, to be honest with you. I don't quite remember, but Undertaker did have a rivalry with Mankind at the time. Matter of fact, it was Mankind's debut when he debuted and feuded with Undertaker, so it was basically his first major feud. During this time, to form a group called Forces of Darkness, basically they were talking about Mankind and Goldust, that car is very loud, to include the Executioner and Vader. The Executioner, I believe, was Terry Funk, I think. In April of 97, in Your House 14, Revenge of the Taker, Undertaker set Bear's face ablaze using a fireball, which was done in retaliation for Bear having Mankind set a fireball to Undertaker's face several weeks prior. Resulting from Undertaker's actions, Bear suffered some fake, kayfabe is the word they used here, burns to his face and was bandaged for a time. He would basically come out in these bandages and all that. And once healed from the burns, Bear changed his looks, shedding the makeup of ghostly pallor and jet-blacked hair to his natural strawberry blonde hair and less makeup. No longer using ghostly appearance and mannerisms, he became loud-mouthed and shrill. So this was a time, basically, Paul Bearer shaved off his mustache. And I believe it was during this time as well when he had all the bandages on his face and stuff. He came up on Monday Night Raw in a promo saying Kane is coming, Undertaker. He's coming, all this stuff, saying you're going to regret this, things like that. He was basically saying that. He was at home recovering, of course. I believe he was either home or he was backstage speaking to Undertaker on the Tron. But all I know is that it was on the Tron. Undertaker was in the ring, and Paul Bearer was just basically saying that Kane was coming. And that's when the debut of Kane happened in 97. Bad Blood in Your House. So around mid-97, Paul Bearer coerced with Undertaker, WWF at the time, WWE Champion at the time, into being his protege again with the ultimatum of revealing a deep, dark secret from their past. During this time, Bear made references to the fires of hell, likening the Undertaker's dark secret to the Undertaker's act of setting fire to his face. So basically, Paul Bearer said, "Listen, I'll forgive you under one condition. I become your protege again. By your side again, and I'll be by your side again. We'll dominate better than ever." And Undertaker kind of had no other choice, and he said, "All right, let's do it," and he got on one knee, very unfortunately so, he got on one knee, and he agreed to it. It only lasted, I believe it was a couple weeks it lasted, until, we had little teases here and there that they were going to split up again, and that's when Undertaker eventually went for like a chokehold on Paul Bearer, and he basically said, "He's alive, Undertaker. Kane's alive, I swear to you." And Undertaker looked at him with a face like, "Oh my God, like, no way." And then that's when he started choking him out for real and all that, and he started hurting him. And basically the dark secret, if you're wondering here, is Kane's brother, in that Kane survived the fire. The story, basically, I'm not going to get too in depth with it, but basically the story was that Undertaker set a funeral home on fire with Kane and his parents inside. However, the parents had passed away from the fire, but Kane actually survived. And Kane sported a mask, hiding his identity, and as well as his scars and his burns, and also his voice. His vocal cords got affected by the fire, so he used a voice box to speak. The Undertaker accepted after several weeks of resistance while managing Undertaker for this time around, quote-unquote managing Undertaker for this time around. Bear engaged in tyrannical behaviors toward him, harassing him constantly. Eventually, Undertaker lost his patience and refused to allow Bear to continue being his manager, leading Bear to reveal the secret, which I already discussed the secret. It basically was just talking about Undertaker's past. Of course, Undertaker and Kane being brothers, that's obviously the secret, like I've said already. while working for Paul Bear, while working for Undertaker's parents as an apprentice mortician in their family funeral home business, witnessed a felony act during the Undertaker's adolescence. Bear claimed that Undertaker had committed an arson murder. Yeah, I remember that too. He kept saying that Undertaker was a murderer and he committed an arson murder. Literally, it's the only word that came out of his mouth. He kept calling him a murderer. Burning down his family funeral home. And basically, Paul Bear hid Kane in a mental asylum during the rest of Kane's youth and adulthood. So that's how they hid Kane. That's how Kane was hidden this whole time from The Undertaker. Yeah, so 6 years of Paul Bear managing Undertaker, in that entire time, you would have never known that Undertaker had a brother. And this was just a great story. The story, of course, was made up by Brother Love, or Bruce Pritchard, is his real name. He came up with a story like, what if Undertaker had a brother? And it's kind of ironic how that works out. Like, Brother Love came up with the story of the Brothers of Destruction. And thing is, Brother Love managed Undertaker at one point. So everything ties in so perfectly. I don't think anything has tied in this as perfectly as this did. It really did. Everything just connected so perfectly. It just could not have been any better. At the time, throughout mid to late 1997, Undertaker denied all of this, claiming it was his younger brother's fault. Eventually, Undertaker would make a promo and say, listen, yes, it was my fault. I did set the funeral home on fire and things like that. So the Undertaker's mother had an affair with Paul Bear, and as a result gave birth to Kane. And that's what makes them brothers. And I believe at one point, they even got a DNA test. Paul Bear got a DNA test with Kane, and the DNA matched. This is from a doctor that had said this. He said that the DNA matched, which led to the conclusion that Kane and Paul Bear really were father and son, and which led to believe, obviously, that Undertaker and Kane are really brothers. The Undertaker accused Bear blaming the Undertaker, accused him of being an arsonist, murderer, and a liar. Connected to these accounts, it was later revealed approximately 6 months after Kane's WWF debut that he was actually the half-brother of The Undertaker. The Undertaker's mother had an affair with Bear, as a result gave birth to Kane. Bear unintentionally revealed on the Raw audience that he was actually Kane's father. This came to light when Bear informed Jerry Lawler on Monday Night Raw at a point in which he thought cameras had stopped rolling for a commercial break, but were still on. I did not know that. Up until that point, Undertaker was under the impression that Kane was fully related to him and his family. Presumably, The Undertaker's deceased father lived his entire life under the same impression. Because of the fire, Undertaker thought Kane had been dead for all those years, claiming he was a pyromaniac, obsessed with the starting fires, and due to the incident, couldn't possibly be alive. And it's funny how that all ties in, because at WrestleMania 20, later on at WrestleMania 20 in 2004, it was in 2003 Survivor Series when Undertaker, as his American Badass persona, faced Mr. McMahon. And Kane came out to help McMahon win by burying him alive. And Undertaker came back at WrestleMania 20, feuding with Kane, of course. He never made an appearance during this feud until WrestleMania 20. Kane basically said that he was dead. He wasn't alive because Kane buried him. And it's kind of funny how that all, ties in, except that it was the other way around that 2004 period. This was a year or two after Kane unmasked, by the way, for the first time. So Kane was no longer under a mask. Bear introduced the vengeful, fiery personified Kane in October 97, Bad Blood in Your House. It was the first time Kane ever appeared, obviously. I'm not going to go through any of this. They had the DNA test. I already went through that. The feud lasted until the summer of 98 when Kane seemingly abandoned Bear to side with The Undertaker, beginning a face turn. So this basically led to Brothers of Destruction being a team. So now this takes us into the Ministry of Darkness, 1998 to 1999. Let me just make sure we are still recording. We absolutely are. Ministry of Darkness, 1998-1999. Basically, Bear sided with Undertaker in a heel team towards the end of 98. Paul Bear betrayed Kane in favor of managing The Undertaker once again. They basically formed the Ministry of Darkness. He basically came out with his signature black hair and a mustache, but wearing a buttoned sweater and a black overcoat. Without the pasty white makeup and speaking in the same voice as his 1997 predecessor. So basically speaking in his normal voice. And The Undertaker formed the Ministry of Darkness. Both he and The Undertaker took a hiatus from WWF unceremoniously in September of 99 as a result of Undertaker suffering an injury. So basically, the Ministry of Darkness, there was a lot of people in there, actually. You had the Acolytes, Edge and Christian of the Brood, as well as Gangrel. I forget his name. What was it? Forget his name. I forget his name. Sorry, I can't. I had a brain fart just now. I can't remember the name. Anyway, it'll probably come up to me after. So a couple other guys were part of it as well. Big Boss Man too, definitely was part of it. Let me see if I can. Man, it's gonna bother me if I don't look it up. He's basically sacrificed this man. Undertaker sacrifices. He also sacrificed. What was it? Stephanie McMahon. He put him on the cross at one point, as well as Stone Cold Steve Austin. Let me see. So basically, Dennis Knight, he ended up being, man, I can't remember the name. Hang on, guys. I'm going to figure out the name. Hang on. Jeez, why can't I figure out the name of this man? Dennis Knight. He changed his name. Dennis Knight changed his name to... Okay, yeah, give me 1 second. I'm going to find this. I'm going to find it. Give me 1 second. Okay, it was Midian. Midian is the name. So it was Dennis Knight was renamed to Midian, and also Viscera was part of this group as well. So, sorry, that took forever for me to find that one. I don't know why. I had a major brain fart just now, and I couldn't figure out, the name, but... Anyway, that was all the Ministry of Darkness. Eventually, they ended up teaming together with the corporate ministry, and that, or the corporation, and that formed the corporate ministry. The corporation basically had Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon. Triple H, I think, was part of it as well. A lot of other guys, too. Oh, yeah, the Stooges. How could I forget the Stooges? Oh, my God. Gerald Briscoe and Pat Patterson. Both former wrestlers way back in the day. And after this era, so basically this part of Undertaker, by the way, this is like a satanic Undertaker. Like, he would sacrifice people. It's probably my favorite Undertaker of all time, if I'm going to be honest with you. But it was a really cool group. It was my favorite version of the Undertaker of all time. But that takes us to a final appearance in 2000 for Paul Bear. In February of 2000, Bear, who turned face once more briefly, returned to WWF as Kane's manager, now wearing a red overcoat, aiding and assisting his son in his war against DX, but retired from on-screen performing shortly after WrestleMania 2000. Later that year, he went backstage to serve as a WWF road agent, stage manager, and talent scout. His contract with WWE ended October 14th of 2002. So Kane had made a return. He had a different attire. It wasn't attire, but the colors were basically swapped. So instead of the red and the being on top and the black being on the bottom, it was swapped. The attire looked a little different from the original as well. So that was pretty cool. He obviously came with that red coat, and Stephanie McMahon I think was on commentary. But it was a really cool appearance. And this takes us to a different promotion. He used to work for NWA. Total Nonstop Action, TNA, as everybody knows. He went under the ring name Percy Pringle III. And he basically managed, I believe. I believe he managed, so it doesn't really say it here, but he only worked there a year. It was 2002 to 2003. And he returned in 2003, October of 2003. He signed a new 3-year contract with WWE when Jim Ross contacted him about rejoining the company. Paul at first refused the offer, but Ross then called again with an offer. At that time, he was suffering from health problems and depression related to his obesity and underwent gastric bypass surgery. In November of 2003, as a signing bonus, WWE agreed to pay for the surgery as Ross promised. After recovering, he reappeared as Paul Bearer in March 2004 at WrestleMania 20 alongside Undertaker in a match against Kane. I already discussed this, how Undertaker had a match with Kane, and Paul Bearer made a return to side with Kane, to side with The Undertaker. And that was the first time siding with Undertaker since the Ministry of Darkness. So Paul Bearer was just back and forth managing Kane and Undertaker so far in this career. By the way, this was the return WWE 2003 to 2005 and also 2007 briefly, I believe. In spring of 2004, Paul Bearer was kidnapped by the Dudley Boys under the direction of Paul Heyman. So this basically is going to be talking about the concrete crypt. This was set up in order to temporarily write Bearer out of WWE storylines because he had to undergo emergency gallbladder surgery after suddenly developing gallstones, a common side effect of gastric bypass surgery. So it was at the Great American Bash. Undertaker faced both of the Dudley Boys, and basically Paul Bearer was inside of a glass crypt, and there was a cement truck there, and Paul Heyman was in control of this cement truck. And so basically, Paul Heyman told The Undertaker, basically saying, listen, you either throw the match and let the Dudley Boys win, or I'm going to bury Paul Bearer in cement. And like I said, the cement truck was in the arena. The cement chute was facing inside of the concrete crypt where Paul Bearer was tied into. Don't know how the hell they tied him into that concrete crypt, if I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think anybody ever realizes that. Like, how the hell did they get him strapped onto that concrete crypt? How did they even, did they kidnap him and, put him to sleep? I know they kidnapped him, but they did put him to sleep or something? Paul Bearer was encased in a glass crypt at ringside, covered up to his chest in cement. Heyman demanded Undertaker throw the match or Bearer would suffocate in cement. The Undertaker won the match, but here's the thing. So Undertaker won the match, and Paul Heyman, I believe, ran away. Now here's the shocking part. Undertaker goes up to the cement truck. Paul Bearer basically says, hey, you're here to save me. Thank God you're here to save me. And Undertaker was like, it would basically had said, listen, I have no other choice. You will rest in peace. Paul Bearer's expression changed from smile to, oh, shit. Undertaker pulled the lever, filled it up with cement, the concrete crypt with Paul Bearer in it. And that was the last time we seen Paul Bearer, basically to write him off for that surgery, obviously. He suffocated him in that cement. On the following week's SmackDown, Bearer was acknowledged to be alive, although gravely injured for storyline purposes. The rehearsal taping earlier in the day of the Bash. There is YouTube footage of this, by the way, of this rehearsal. With Undertaker libbing, a weird word, and only half of the stunt complete in an empty arena, was leaked onto the internet dirt sheets and actually broadcasted live by accident in many of the television markets. So basically, if you're wondering, is this real cement? Yes and no. There was real cement used, however, there was oatmeal mixed inside of the cement, but there was a real truck that was used for this. However, like I said, the cement was mixed with oatmeal. So, yeah. Yeah, but to answer anybody's question, wondering whether or not if this is real cement or not, yes and no, because it was mixed with cement and oatmeal. Obviously, because obvious reasons. Don't know how they did the part with Paul Bear. Oh, how does she know? My girlfriend just asked me if I'm doing the podcast. Yeah, damn right I am. So, anyway. Yeah, for obvious reasons, but one thing I'm wondering is why, like how did he survive anyway? Because they buried him under it. A lot of people like to say it was a stunt double as well. I don't know how true that is, but yeah. Let me go ahead and continue to read on through here, as he had 2 years remaining on his contract. However, Bear was used as a booker for the company up until WWE decided to terminate his contract in April 11th of 2005. June of 2005, Bear announced that he had signed a new deal with WWE, allowed him to market his personality, and required he attended autograph sessions, make promotional appearances on occasion, work television and house shows. And in late January of 2007 at SmackDown/ECW house show in Mobile, Alabama, Bear joined the Brothers of Destruction at ringside carrying the original urn. I don't remember that. That's interesting. So I guess he had a brief stint with the Brothers of Destruction. But this is, now we're at the point where he worked the independent circuit from 2010 and 2012. Bear returned to the Boston-based Millennial Wrestling Federation as a top heel manager along with John Bradshaw Layfield, JBL, after 4 years, leading Stalker Dylan Cage at Soul Survivor 6 against the Iron Sheik in Black Machismo Jay Lethal in the Sheik's retirement match on April 24th of 2010. Man, Iron Sheik retiring in 2010. Holy crap. Do you guys know how old he is, man? Like, Sheik, let me just give you an idea. Sheik used to wrestle in the 70s. The 70s and the 80s. The early 80s. That's how old this man is. Literally. He wrestled, I believe, Bruno Sammartino. That's how old this guy is. And he retired in 2010? Shee. On October 12, 2012, Bear managed Vader against Rikishi at Pro Wrestling Syndicate in Rahway, New Jersey. Basically, at this point, this is a short returns here and there. I believe he feuded with Kane and Edge, where he was kidnapped, and I'm sure this will be mentioned here. On September 24, 2010 episode of SmackDown, Bear made his first on-screen appearance in 6 years after being brought out in a casket. He helped The Undertaker, who was feuding with Kane, over the World Heavyweight Championship by restoring Undertaker's powers with the urn. Just like I mentioned, Undertaker's urn had powers in it, and when opened, it would summon Undertaker and his powers. Bear officially became Undertaker's manager again by accompanying him to the ring for his match against Kane for the title at Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. However, during this now this is me using my own words, by the way. During this Hell in a Cell match, Paul Bear got in the ring with the urn. He opened the urn, a light shined out of it, and blinded The Undertaker, which means he turned on The Undertaker once again to side with Kane. That helped Kane win the World Heavyweight Championship. During the match, Bear once again turned on Undertaker after shining a light on his eyes when he was about to tombstone Kane. He then let Kane hit Undertaker with the urn to help him win. On the October 15th episode of SmackDown, Bear challenged Undertaker to face Kane in a buried alive match for the World Heavyweight Championship at Bragging Rights. Which, by the way, this is the last buried alive match ever. And even to this day, it is still the last buried alive match in WWE history. As of this recording, I don't know if they'll ever come out with another buried alive match. I kind of hope they do, because it's pretty cool match stipulation. One of my favorites, to be honest. Basically, Kane won this buried alive match. He buried The Undertaker. To which Undertaker accepted by attacking Kane. And at Bragging Rights, Kane once again defeated Undertaker after interference by Bear, who was almost thrown into the grave by The Undertaker, and the Nexus, who helped Bear and Kane bury The Undertaker. At this point, Kane was the World Heavyweight Champion. He feuded with Edge, and he was named the new challenger for the World Heavyweight Championship at Survivor Series. And on the November 12th episode of SmackDown, Kane cost Edge his match against Nexus member David Otunga. After the match, Edge kidnapped Paul Bearer, and everybody knows this feud. Edge kidnapped Paul Bearer by strapping him to a wheelchair. Later that night, Edge used Bearer to cost Kane his match against the Big Show. And the following week, Edge tormented Bearer throughout the night by throwing a dodgeball at him and force feeding and throwing pizza all over him. Edge then used Bearer to call for Kane in the parking lot, but Kane wasn't able to get to Bearer in time, and Edge attacked him and drove off with Bearer. So basically, this was weeks and weeks of this reoccurring of Kane trying to get the Paul Bearer back, but Edge was holding him hostage and playing mind games with him and things like that, and throwing Paul Bearer down the stairs. And Kane goes downstairs to see, and it wasn't actually Paul Bearer. It was just like a dummy, like a fake, like a doll in a way. Can't find the word for it for some reason, but Kane wasn't able to get to Bear and Edge, and attacked and drove off. At Survivor Series, Edge brought an empty wheelchair, causing Kane to go mad frantically, trying to interrogate him on where Bear was held. Even though the match ended in a draw, Kane was unable to find Bear as Edge wheeled his enemy into a barricade. On the November 26th episode of SmackDown, Kane demanded that Edge to let Bear go, but Edge refused. Kane attempted to track down Bear, but was unable to find him. Basically, Kane was just trying to find Paul Bear where Edge had hit him. Edge was like, "Listen, I don't have Paul Bear anymore. Like, I hid him somewhere." And yeah, that led to Kane going crazy trying to find him. And this was such a cool story, man. I really loved this story. Kane offered a second title shot to Edge, which he accepted, but continued to keep Bear with him. At the end of the night, Edge lured Kane to the parking lot, where Edge drove over a dummy version of Paul Bear, with the actual Paul Bear in the back seat of the car. And on the December 3rd episode of SmackDown, Edge continued his mind games with Kane by pushing a dummy version of Paul Bear down some stairs, which I already discussed that. He brought out a Paul Bear look-alike. Kane went on a search for him again, but Edge drove away in a truck with Bear tied up on the back. The following week, Kane begged Edge to return Bear, but Edge once again refused. Kane then refused to participate in the main event that night and once again searched for Bear. After seeing what he thought was a dummy version of Paul Bear on top of two ladders, Kane pushed them over. Afterward, Kane saw that he pushed the actual Paul Bear off the ladders onto the concrete floor, thus injuring him and writing him out of the storyline. So obviously, Edge playing mind games with him, over the weeks, and Kane thought that this was a dummy, like, "Oh, I'm not falling for it this time." He pushed him down, and it actually was Paul Bear, legitimately, and that's when he basically got written off. And in April of 2012, Bear returned for a brief stint as part of Kane's ongoing feud with Randy Orton. And basically, this ties into Paul Bear's last appearance. Eventually, he was kidnapped. Paul Bear was kidnapped by Orton and then stuck in a storage freezer while strapped in a wheelchair. Kane later came for Bear, only to roll him back into the freezer, saying, "I'm saving you, ... from me." And that would be the last time Paul Bear would ever make an appearance in WWE TV and in general. Bear was planned to reunite with The Undertaker and Kane on the 1000th episode of Raw in July of 2012, but could not make the event due to scheduling and travel conflicts. And this basically takes us to his death. It was on March 2nd, 2013. Moody attended the annual Gulf Coast Wrestlers reunion in Mobile, Alabama, riding a wheelchair. Not sure if this was legit or if it was just in story to continue the story so it's not breaking kayfabe. But according to the club board member, Cowboy Bob Kelly, Moody was having breathing difficulties at the event. He was coughing and told friends he was going to seek treatment for the respiratory problems that he had trouble standing at the time. So I guess this was a real injury. real medical problems. Kelly said that Moody was treated for a blood clot after the reunion, and on March 5th, 2023, Paul Bear died in Mobile, Alabama, at the age of 58, due to a heart attack. The cause of the heart attack was, this is a big word here, so supraventricular tachycardia? I hope I pronounced that right. Which causes a dangerously high heart rate. He is interned beside his wife at Serenity Memorial Garden Cemetery in Theodore, Alabama. And this, of course, leads to later on in 2013, of course, I believe it was a month later, being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Obviously, Paul Bear was not able to attend this because he passed away. However, I believe it was his sons that had accepted the award on his behalf. He was also used as part of the Undertaker CM Punk story going into WrestleMania 29. They had the story where Paul Bear's ashes were inside of his urn, and there was a segment on Raw where CM Punk, he took the ashes out of the urn and he splattered it all. He threw it at the Undertaker, and there was a segment at one point. I think this was the same segment where CM Punk was dressed as a druid. Paul Bear, quote unquote, came out, and who was disguised as Paul Bear? It was Paul Heyman, who was managing CM Punk at the time, came out dressed as Paul Bear, doing the voice and all that. He had the urn and playing mind games with the Undertaker, and this was one of the greatest stories with Undertaker. The Undertaker, one WrestleMania stories, I should say, that Undertaker had. It was with CM Punk when they brought in Paul Bear. Obviously, CM Punk was a heel at the time. Kane did get involved in this at one point as well. Kane had a match, I believe, with CM Punk on Monday Night Raw. He pinned him for the 1, 2, 3, and immediately it wasn't Kane's music that played. It was The Undertaker, and Undertaker's music played right after the match, and immediately out came Undertaker with the urn. He did the pose, the knee pose. Kane proceeded to do the knee pose as well inside of the ring. That ended the Monday Night Raw, and I do remember watching this live on TV, so it was really cool to see that. Kane ended up coming out, not to induct Paul Bear. Yes, he did. I'm sorry, yeah. So Kane inducted Paul Bear, and on behalf of the acceptance of Paul Bear, out came, of course, Paul Bear's sons. After the speech was done, Undertaker came out in his full gear in the Hall of Fame. He came out in his gear. He came out with the urn in his hand. He did the knee pose and on the Titantron, it said in memory of William Moody, Paul Bear, 1954 to 2013. Now, to see Undertaker at a Hall of Fame ceremony is extremely rare. Extremely rare. And thank God CM Punk did not get involved in this. If he did, that would have pushed the story even more, and it would have made him even more of a heel. I feel like they should have tied it into it, but at the same time they didn't, so that's a good thing. They did do a similar thing recently with Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio, where Rey Mysterio got inducted in the Hall of Fame. Dominic Mysterio was there. We thought that he was going to attack Rey Mysterio in the middle of his Hall of Fame speech, but he ended up just getting up and walking away with the Judgment Day. Thank God they did something like that and not like an attack, because, man, the Hall of Fame is a very important event. Like, that would be pretty messed up if they did something like that. So Undertaker defeated Punk at WrestleMania, and he took back the urn. I forgot about this. So basically, CM Punk had possession of the urn, and Undertaker was trying to get it back. But like I said, Paul Bear got involved in this, and March 3rd, 2014 episode of Raw, it was announced that Paul Bear would be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So this was a year after his passing. 2014, really? Was it really? Okay, so... Oh, so it was WrestleMania 2000... Yeah, so it was WrestleMania 30 where he got inducted. It was like around that time. Oh, okay. So 2013 was The Undertaker and CM Punk's story, and more recently, of course, Paul Bearer had passed away, and they used that for a story. And I'm pretty sure Paul Bearer would have been okay with it, honestly. I think he would have loved it. He would have loved the story, to be honest with you. I feel like he would. And on Mick Foley's podcast, the question was asked, do you think they went too far with it? And Mick Foley thought, like, yes and no. He basically said, for the most part, yeah, they did kind of go a little too far with it. But at the same time, it was pretty good storytelling. So, and of course, the question was, too, would Paul Bearer would have liked it? And Mick Foley basically answered it and said, yeah, I think he would have liked it. Yeah, I think he wouldn't have thought it was a pretty cool storyline. So it was, yeah. So he passed away in 2013 and got involved in the storyline of CM Punk and Undertaker in 2013 WrestleMania, but got inducted a year later at WrestleMania 30. Okay, so that does make sense. All right, so I knew it was like a year later. I just didn't think that it made any sense. But eventually, February 24th of 2016, his Hall of Fame ring was shown on Pawn Stars. The seller stated that his ring was given to him by his family. Moody's son Daniel later stated that the ring was a fake. Oh boy. On November 22nd, 2020, a hologram of Paul Bearer appeared at The Undertaker's final farewell at Survivor Series while The Undertaker performed his trademark kneeling pose, which I already discussed that. And that's basically it with Paul Bearer. It wasn't much to talk about with Paul Bearer. I know in 1994, he was involved in a storyline with Ted DiBiase, saying that, so basically Ted DiBiase had, quote-unquote, The Undertaker, and Paul Bearer would come out and say, no, I have the real Undertaker, and it was SummerSlam in 94. Paul Bearer came out with the urn. He shined the urn all in the arena, and out came the real Undertaker. Obviously, the real Undertaker won the match versus Ted DiBiase's version of The Undertaker. This version of The Undertaker, by the way, would go on a couple weeks, wrestling some matches with Ted DiBiase, and it was pretty ironic because Ted DiBiase brought in The Undertaker. He debuted The Undertaker at Survivor Series 1990. But that basically takes us to the end of this podcast. It probably wasn't, I'm pretty damn sure it wasn't as long as The Undertaker and Kane one. But Paul Bearer would definitely be remembered as an all-time great manager, one of the greatest managers ever to step foot in a wrestling ring as a manager, of course. He did not, obviously he did wrestle a couple matches, and I'm surprised it didn't mention those matches. I'm not sure who he faced in some of the matches, but it was about a handful of matches, if that he wrestled in WWE, or WWF at the time, of course. But he was mostly a manager for Undertaker and Kane, and briefly with Mankind. But that basically sums up this podcast. It was a little shorter than the other three, I should say, because it was Brothers of Destruction altogether. Then I talked about Kane, and then Undertaker, and of course Paul Bearer being last. He will be remembered as an all-time great manager to both Kane and The Undertaker. If it wasn't for him, the Brothers of Destruction story, I don't think would have existed. If it did, it probably would be a shell of it. But that basically ends it off. I hope you enjoyed this one. I try to use as much of my own words as I could. My next podcast episode will be talking about it's a review for SummerSlam, which should be on. The pre-show should be on in about an hour, so I will be tuning into that. So that'll be pretty cool. I will be having it on. I'll probably be roaming around the stores having it on. I do have my earbuds with me, so for right now, I'll be listening onto this podcast to make sure everything went well, make sure I didn't forget anything. But until then, I'll see you guys on the next podcast. Again, I don't know when the SummerSlam one will be uploaded. It most likely will not be tomorrow because I will be busy tomorrow. More than likely, it'll probably be on Monday or Tuesday. I know that's a little late, but I'll try as hard as I can to get it in for Monday. Thing is, too, if I do get this apartment, I will be very busy packing. So I don't know. I can't guarantee you a SummerSlam review is in the books, but I definitely do plan on trying to get that review as best as I can. Again, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, like I said, I'll try getting maybe Monday. I'll try getting in the SummerSlam review. If I can get it in tomorrow, that would be awesome, which is Sunday. So if I can get it in tomorrow, that'd be pretty cool. Maybe I'll take some time to do so. But I did want to start packing a little bit just to be prepared for this, just in case I do get the approval for the apartment. So wish me luck, guys, on that. I am praying to the Lord. I really am. I'll be very upset if I don't get this apartment because it's a very nice apartment. It's in private property. There's a swimming pool, pool table, fitness center. It's got all this nice stuff, a dog park, a playground. But obviously, more importantly, it's in a private property, and there's like a little community center, like I said, with all that good stuff. So it's very clean property as well, very well maintained. Excuse me. Oh, dear. Sorry. That's quite a way to end the podcast off. But, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Wish me luck, like I said, for this apartment. I hope I get it. I'm pretty sure by the next podcast I will let you know whether or not I did get it. Sorry if you didn't hear me there. I said, wish me luck on this apartment. Hopefully I'll get it. I turned my head around. I don't know if you heard me saying that, but anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you see you guys next time on the next podcast. Tell your friends about me. And by the way, almost forgot, just like I forgot in the last podcast episode, I will be putting the link to the Ape Squad Facebook page down below, as well as my YouTube channel. Don't upload on it much, but figured if you want to check it out, go for it. Yeah. So again, latest episodes will be posted on my Ape Squad Facebook page. I'll be putting the link to that Facebook page down below. Please go ahead, follow that page. That's where you'll be getting latest episodes. And also, tell your friends about me, family, dogs, cats, uncles, grandmas, grandpas. Tell whoever the hell you want. Hell, go to the zoo and tell the animals. Tell them I have a podcast as well. Make sure you do that. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time, and have a great day. Hopefully you guys tune in to SummerSlam. I'll be tuned into that. That's going to be in about maybe a half hour, an hour or so from now. It is 5:19 right now, so I'm pretty sure it starts at 6. But anyway, I'm going to end this off now. See you guys next time. Peace out.